Alrighty. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining today. We're going to be presenting on BIM360 design and going over some practical applications of the actual service. So just a couple of things to get started with. Everyone's going to be in listen-only mode for the duration of the presentation. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to put them into the chat or into the questions or into the questions window. And I will be glad to answer them or fill them in at the end. So just depending on how they fit in, I'll take care of that. Now, just a couple of introductory pieces. So if you're not familiar with Microdesk, Microdesk is an AECO industry consulting firm. We've been around since '94, actually. We have 12 locations across the U.S. and one in the U.K. now. We have a team of over 170 plus, always growing, always looking for new people. And our consulting specialists actually come from the industry. So I worked as an architect for about 10 years before joining Microdesk. We have people that come from structural engineering, mechanical engineering, civil, construction backgrounds. So we have people that not just know the tools, but actually know the industry. And with that, we're able to offer different services. Building information modeling, we can do workflow assessments or enterprise strategy for long-term growth. We can also do management, support, and mentoring, and we have our own application and software development team. So we can work on that for our clients and create custom applications when needed. Now, today's presentation is going to be on BIM360 design. It's going to be given by me, Peter Marchese. I'm the Senior Technology Evangelist at Microdesk. I focus on emerging technologies, VR, AR, UAVs, cloud services, like in this case, processes and customizations. And I get to play around with the cool stuff and figure out, is it just cool or is it actually useful? And in the case of the cloud technology, like we're going to be going over today, definitely actually useful. Now, our agenda is to go over just a quick run through of BIM360, make sure everybody knows what we're talking about, and then go over the benefits and how to get access, and again, the QA. Now, before we get rolling into this, I just want to ask everybody just a couple of quick questions. So if you can just let me know, what is your current role? So like, are you designer, engineer, in construction, etc.? Alrighty, good mix of principals and designers, and a handful of people in construction as well. Thank you. And another quick one here. Are you currently using BIM360? Or have you maybe used it in the past but moved away from it for whatever reason? Nice, good amount of people are actually using it. Okay, give another 2 seconds. And last one I promise before we get rolling. Are you currently using any mobile tools or cloud tools to access it from the field? Or to access your project content from the field? Okay, majority of people saying no. Hopefully this will change and give you some options. And a good amount of people saying that they actually plan to soon. So hopefully this will help out. Alrighty, enough with the polls. Again, if anybody has any questions throughout, please feel free to pop them into the Q&A or into the chat window. I'll keep an eye on that, and if I can answer it as part of the presentation, I will. If it doesn't really fit in, I'll make sure I answer it at the end. Alrighty, so BIM360 design practical applications. Now, a couple of ways to look at this is typical BIM360 overall. The focus here is on having a cloud solution that works overall throughout the entire life cycle of a project. And there's a lot of tools or components that fit into the whole BIM360 workflow and service platform. And it really is a platform. Now, the ones that we're going to be focusing on today are the BIM360 Design Collaboration, which also includes the classic version of it called Collaboration for Revit, and BIM360 Document Management. That is the backbone of all the content management and sharing for the next-gen services. So all the content is going to be there, and rather than having to upload it 5 times to 5 different services or different locations, perfect. We have one location, one version. It's very easy to track and access. And all of these different tools together are focused on trying to help or alleviate the challenges that we find as an industry with collaboration. We've got multiple firms, different backgrounds, different needs, different things that are happening, whether it's from an office standpoint or from the field, collaboration, content, reviews, bidding, handover, all those different things that typically are done in different tools that have no real connection. And therefore, there's more than enough spots where you can lose information or go off track. So we're really focusing on trying to take care of those challenges. So making sure everybody is accountable and the project is secure, taking care of our team and making sure that they're able to communicate and manage the project's complexity with tools that are much more efficient and designed for that. Now, a big part of this is going to be having anytime, anywhere access. So if you can think of it this way, how many of us have actually been at that point where we have a meeting? So first thing we do is we run by the office, we grab the project set. You know, we made sure the team printed it out the night before. So we grab that set, we run out for the meeting. Then of course, when we get to that meeting, we realize that we forgot something, or that the set was printed and then they made a change, or somebody didn't sync beforehand. You know, not exactly the best feeling in the world, but more likely every one of us have actually had that. So the best thing about this is that all of the content that we have here is available at any point in time. So from the web access, all I have to do is log in and I have access to all the content that's up there. If I actually have my mobile device, I can access it as well. And the great thing about the mobile device is that I don't actually need to be connected to the internet to view it. As long as I connected before maybe I leave the office or the Starbucks, I've got my Wi-Fi, I can actually access and review and work on my content without that internet connection. You know, the web, mobile, it really doesn't matter. And the great thing is, let's say I get to that meeting, I open up my laptop, get online. All I need to do is open my model and resync, and I'm going to have the latest version, the latest changes, all of that content. So those issues of you running out and not having that information that you needed, I can easily grab it from anywhere, no matter what. So that's one of the first things that you're immediately going to have at your disposal when you start working within the BIM360 design workflow. You can always access your content. And it doesn't matter if it's CAD, PDF, Revit, InfraWorks, you will be able to access that. Now, next big one is having our teams being much more spread out. Many projects nowadays are not being done by one firm or having all of the firms in the same region, let alone city or state. Our projects are becoming much more spread out, and as part of that, our project teams are as well. Now, for a lot of the clients that we work with, they have looked at different things like using Revit Server or VPN or other solutions, and they work, but they're not always the best. Maybe you're running into things like networking slowdowns. You're having problems setting up security because each version of the Revit server is different. You really can't break them up very well. So you have to have 5 or 6 different Revit servers just to narrow things down. And if you try to have somebody from outside your firm access that, you have to worry about setting up security issues or networking problems. Let alone just managing the models itself can be time-consuming. We've talked to different people that find out that when you consider the billable rate of your project team, the time it takes for them to clean the model and then send it and manage that process, you could be spending up to $500 a week just on the model cleanup and sharing process. And how many weeks is the project? You know, you're spending a couple of grand every month just on that one aspect that can be done, you know, very quickly and very easily through the web access. And the main thing is that we're trying to cut down on the 2 things that every project needs more of is time and money. Now, the great thing about the BIM360 design is that you have that shared project data, all that content. And again, we're not just talking about Revit. We're talking about the DWG files, IFC, PDFs. We have all of our different teams that can work in their own sandbox. So I don't have to have everybody else looking at or working off of my working model. I have my area where my team works. It's nice and safe, cordoned off. I can control that, and when I am ready to, I can package that content and share that with the other teams. And then when they send me their changes, it doesn't automatically update what my team sees. I have the ability to review that, to confirm it does what I need before actually the terms that we're looking at here consume that data and start working off of that. So you still have full control over that. I can view the different models, I can view the content, and I can actually see and track all of the changes that are happening and when they're actually happening. So regardless of where our team is or what they might be doing, what teams they're on, whether it's engineering, civil, architecture, we're able to ensure that everybody is connected and that they actually are coordinating and collaborating together. And one of the big things when we talk about this is that sort of control over your content, regardless of whether it's Word files or Revit files. I still have the ability to manage and maintain the security that I want. So I can invite people to my project folder and say, okay, I only want people on this company to have access to this. In this folder here, those people from this other company, they can have access to it, but all they can do is upload, or maybe they only can view. So you have that full level of control on a by folder basis. So it's not like if I invite them to the project, they can see everything. No, you invite them to the project and then you can dictate what parts of the project they can see and then what level of access they have to those parts. Now, another fun one that more than likely everybody on the call has actually seen or dealt with is fun with versions. So unfortunately, we've probably all been in that situation where we look at something and we realize that, okay, we've got 3 of these files. And then we look at the file name, and the file name doesn't really help us much because they're different formats. So maybe one has a date, another one has a version number, and maybe the other one is just a clean name. I have no idea which of these is actually the most recent. Now, this is always fun when you need to figure out which one to work or which one to send to somebody. Or in this case, which is always a nightmare, let's say that somebody was working on the model and then you come to open it up later on and you realize, you get this warning, they opened it up in the wrong version of Revit. Or somebody saved over your file. All of these are version problems that on a normal project that's on a normal network, companies can run into. And in some cases, like with the updating the project file, they can cost a lot of time and a lot of money just trying to deal with the issue. One of the nice things here is that everything is version controlled. Anytime somebody uploads it, it tracks it. I can always roll back. I can download the source file to look at the differences. I can make sure that things are okay. If we're talking about using BIM360 Design, that locks the actual version of the file. I don't have to worry about anybody accidentally upgrading to the latest version or the next version of Revit without the explicit say-so of the project. And the key thing here, which a lot of people take advantage of this service, even if they're not using the BIM360 Design aspect of it, is the actual version control of checking it. So maybe I like the fact that it tells me I'm on version 8, but what is version 8? BIM360 can actually look at the models and then go through and say, these are all the things that have been added, these are all the things that have been removed, and these are all the things that have actually been modified. And I can do this from different version to different version. This also works for things like CAD files, IFC, Navisworks files. If we're talking about PDFs, it'll do something similar, but it's more of a color coordination to show me the differences. But as long as I'm working with the actual models here, it's going to give me a lot of data, and I can easily filter this down so that way it's only showing me certain disciplines. So maybe me as a structural engineer, all I care about is, has the architect actually changed their columns? Perfect, I can hop in and take a look at that. Now, another big thing that actually is beneficial from this right from the get-go is our actual review process. So I know a lot of people, when we're commuting, we're trying to take advantage of the downtime, whether it's to relax and listen to music or read something, listen to podcasts, or actually maybe get a little bit of work done. The problem with that is if you're commuting, that's not always the easiest or best spot to sit there and go through a full set of documents. It's not you don't really have that much room to lay out a full set of drawings and start marking them up. Sort of in the same vein of things is, let's say you're in a meeting and you need to review things. One of the problems you might run into is you don't talk to the person who's actually doing the work. You tell somebody that something needs to change, That person tells their person that it needs to change, and then it starts going around the wheel. By the time that change actually comes back to you, maybe it's not right. Maybe you're on the phone and you're trying to tell them, okay, you need to move that wall right next to the lobby, it has to go over a foot. Then by the time it comes back, you realize they actually moved the wrong wall and they moved it in the wrong direction. The great thing about this is that rather than having to play the game of telephone or figure out how to work with big sheets of paper, all you need is a mobile device, anything with a website. I can open up my cell phone and I can actually start going through the drawings and putting in markups. I can easily hop in and say, okay, well, there's an issue and I need to assign this to a specific person, so that way that they actually know I need you to do this, and I can actually say exactly where I'm talking about. And all of the information that I'm putting in here is easily trackable from a dashboard. I can take a look at things and say, okay, well, these are the ones that are opened. These are the things that are, answered and closed or requiring review. And from this list, I can then jump to exactly where that markup was taken. So I can work off of that directly from my mobile device, from the website, and I'm pointing out specific things. I need you to do this. I'm not having to play the game of telephone or try to figure out how to wrangle a 24 by 36 while I'm on the subway. Now, one of the last big things here is our ability to coordinate with others. So we're talking about BIM360 Design. BIM360 Design focuses on the Revit application, but we're still working with other formats. We're still able to utilize PDFs, utilize CAD files. When we're talking about CAD, I can upload CAD here. I can still do markups. I can still do issues. I can still do the tracking of changes. And I can actually easily link in the CAD into my Revit projects. And the key thing here is there's a tool called Desktop Connector that comes for free. So if you've got that installed, I can then access the paths for all my files that are on the cloud, and then I can link to them. And everybody else on the project will maintain the same linking, even though we're on different computers. So this makes sure that if I link this in, people aren't going to be looking for, my C drive. They'll be looking for that file. This is true for IFC files now. So if there's an IFC file that is being brought to me, whether it's for security reasons, they don't want to give me the Revit file, or it's because it's coming from a different format maybe. Perfect. I can bring that in and manage that way. And one of the big things that most people tend to I don't want to say not pay attention to, but you tend to forget about when we're talking about BIM or when we're talking about Revit is our civil team. One of the great things is that there actually is some clean workflows with our civil project team now. So from Civil 3D, they can easily create their topography. That's always been the case, but getting that topo into Revit, maybe not so much. All they need to do now is connect their project to BIM360, and they can actually share the topography right to there. And again, the same thing I mentioned before with the DWG files. Using the desktop connector, me and Revit can then link in their topo that they just exported, and that'll recreate the topography in Revit. And as a link, all they need to do from Civil 3D is update the file that they exported, and then I can reload my link inside of Revit, and it updates that topography again. So it's not a bi-directional workflow, but there is a smooth workflow now from Civil 3D to manage and maintain their site work inside of Revit. And sort of the same vein with Civil 3D is InfraWorks. So they have the ability to easily link in data sources from BIM360. And that data source can actually be my Revit project that's being done in BIM360 Design. So they can link in my Revit project into InfraWorks. They can then save and share that InfraWorks model in the cloud. We can view different design layouts using the different features of InfraWorks. They can do markups. They can manage it, do issues the same way as everybody else. But it truly brings them into the same workflow and adds them to the benefits of the actual Revit team using BIM360 Design. Now, all of these different aspects of the cloud, all the different components that are working with BIM360 for the specific workflow, the goal here is to impact our projects in some way, whether it's from a cost standpoint or from a time standpoint, which usually turns into cost. So the Boston Consulting Group actually worked out that the implementation here can cut the life cycle cost by 15% or construction by 30%. When you think of this as an industry-wide potential, so we're talking the construction design industry is going to be $1.5 trillion by, I think, 2023. Oh, sorry, it'll be $1.5 trillion benefit out of $10 trillion projected by 2023. So, I mean, it's not a little bit. Now, if anyone's curious about how to get access to this, if you've ever used the previous version, so maybe BIM360 Field or Collaboration for Revit, that means you already have access to the new one. And this is broken up into different packages. So one of the questions that actually came up here were, are the features being shown added modules or the base program? So there are multiple modules of BIM360. What we're talking about here is the BIM360 design platform. So if you purchase design, that gets you the cloud work sharing and the design collaboration service. You also have access to the classic ones, C4R and Team, and the document management component. All the things I mentioned, the markups, the issues, the home page that shows you a status of your content, accessing it from a mobile device. All of that is available through this package. And if you hadn't had a chance to try this yet, we can always do custom demos for you. But more importantly is there are trials for this, and there now is a brand new trial for BIM360 Design. So if you were waiting to give it a shot, you wanted to give a test run on one of your projects, that's actually now possible. And if you're curious to see where things are going, you wanted to know how things have been changed, you can actually go to the BIM360 roadmap. So Autodesk has a nice blog that they go through a couple of different things, one of which is the roadmap, where they'll tell you this is what they're planning to work on and some basic information, no timelines. They are publicly traded, so they really can't do that. And they also have an ideas portal. The ideas are where you can say, this is what I really need. This is what I hope that you would focus on. You can vote on other people's ideas and also post your own. And they have webinars every month that go over what's new and how things are actually changing. So they are focused on all of those things. Okay. So let's see here, a couple of other questions that are popping up. One question, will this be available in any form after the webinar? Yes, this webinar is being recorded and it will be posted to our YouTube page. We have a YouTube portal for Microdesk. Should be there by the end of the week, early next week at the latest. So another question, have there been any changes to how BIM360 handles shared coordinates? At the moment, no. You typically want to set, excuse me, set those up beforehand if possible. Again, not always possible, but you want to set those up first and then push that to the cloud. What you're actually mentioning there is still the current setup. That is something that they're working on, though. Let's see here. Another question, how does Navisworks play a role in all this? So there's a couple of things for Navisworks. If you are still using Navisworks for coordination, whether it's Clash or anything else, you can still easily use it as part of this. Now, most of the time what you're going to end up doing is creating an NWC file from Revit. If you want to, you can create that NWC file and actually post that to BIM360 document management, so that way it's available for everyone on the project. So you're always overwriting the previous one, and then you can open that up into Navisworks. There's a couple of things that are still in the works with the way that the desktop connector syncs. Some people are still using the classic version of Glue as just a portal to funnel all of the Navisworks files into Navis. Just depends on how you want to work on it. Currently, Navisworks does not have an open from the next gen button. It's still looking at the classic Glue. So we might see a change to that maybe next year. One of the great things about the cloud services is we're seeing updates literally every month. The desktop programs change much less frequently, so I wouldn't expect anything very soon on that. But you can still take advantage of the benefits of sharing and access and version control on BIM360 design and document management with Navisworks. And you can post a Navisworks NWD file to BIM360 and use that as a viewer if you want to give your model to other people that you've sort of collected everything together to view in. Yep. Another question here. Can a civil engineer, lost that. Can a civil engineer access the BIM360 aspect for Revit exports if they do not have membership, i.e. the architect has membership and invites a civil engineer? So the way that BIM360 works, there's different licensing requirements. So I'm actually going to take a couple of steps back here in the PowerPoint just to show something. There we go. So if what we're talking about is BIM360 docs, glue, or field, the company who owns the BIM360 hub, the place where all the content lives, they would be providing access to it. So if Microdesk is running a project and I need to invite 5 consultants to glue, 2 to build, and 1 to docs, I'm giving them seats from my pool. Now, where BIM360 design is different is that if I invite a company who has their own seat, they're not pulling from my pool anymore. They can bring their own seat with them. So that's where it's a little bit different. But if a civil engineer is invited to a BIM360 document management, they don't necessarily need design collaboration. They just need access to the document management. They would have that seat from the owner who invited them. Another question here. When setting up large project team, designers, contractors, subcontractors, what are the common mistakes in setting this up? One of the biggest common mistakes that I've seen is that when someone is inviting another user, and I'm actually going to switch to the service for a second. Wait for the GoToMeeting to catch up. There we go. When I'm in my project and I invite somebody, maybe I invite them and I give them the wrong access, or I give them the wrong role and that makes them an admin or not. So I typically want to make sure that I'm giving them the correct level of access. The next thing from that is making sure that when they're invited to the project, that I actually go through and set their permissions. This happens with a lot of people. They'll get invited to the project, but then when they log in, they can't see anything. Because once you've been invited to the project, you're in it, but until I actually say what you're allowed to see, what access you have, what folders you can see, it's actually going to be considered blank for you. So that's one of the big ones. Making sure that you set up the permissions correctly, and if we're talking about BIM360 design, making sure that you set up the teams correctly for organizing the different project teams. Those are the 2 big things. Another question here. Should we think of BIM360 design as a collaboration arena that will exist only for the life of a project, or as a permanent storage location for the project for future work? I've actually seen both examples of that. Some of our clients that are owners, like universities, for example, or hospitals are another good one. They're looking into owning the process. So all the project takes place on their hub. So at the end of the project, they have a fully fledged model that maybe has commissioning data involved as well. In most cases, though, it's more of a collaboration area that is the life of the project. Once that project is over, it can be archived, content can be downloaded and then shared, but we're seeing more and more companies start to see the value of maintaining that data and leveraging it for future work. And as more and more modules are created for BIM360, whether it's third-party plugins or Autodesk official components, we're going to see more people, I think, take advantage of this as a lifecycle tool. Another question here. Does that include sharing topographic CAD files into Revit? Yes, exactly. So in an example like this, I can view my InfraWorks model in the browser. Let me get out of my permissions here. And this is if I want to view the InfraWorks model. But the real thing is maybe I actually have civil engineering files that are actual CAD files. If that's the case, then I can share that file and publish it to BIM360 Document Management, and I can do that via a specific tool now in Civil 3D 2019.1, and then I can import that right into Revit. A lot of good questions here. Another one, can I go into detail on the BIM360 team creation and the folder that team is associated with in Docs? Okay, so there's 2 things here. And a lot of this comes from the terminology that Autodesk uses. So BIM360 team can be thought of as the classic version of the BIM360 document management. So team creation is its own hub, and then you would create projects in here. On the next gen, essentially I would go in and I would create a new project, and I would give it the name, the address, the construction type, however it's going to be set up there. And then once I actually have that project, then I can start inviting the actual project members, setting up my services, and organizing that. So that way it actually can have the right rights, permissions, and setup. So it really depends on the version of Revit that you're working in, though. If you are using Revit 2018.3 and newer, you can use the next-gen services. If you are using 2018.2 and older, you have to use the classic services. Okay. Another question, if a user is working on multiple BIM360 design projects, is there a seat required for each project? No. So what happens is if you're invited to the actual project, so let me hop in here again. So if I am using BIM360 design, again, not the other three, but if I'm using BIM360 design and me as a user have been giving an entitlement on BIM360, I can go to as many projects as I want to, and I pull that same license with each one. Now, if we're talking about the other three, so maybe I have a project manager. He's not going to get to BIM360 design because he doesn't open up Revit, but I want him to be able to see the model. I want him to be able to track the changes. I want him to be able to do markups, create issues, and actually manage the project from the cloud. I'm probably going to get him a BIM360 doc seat because it's cheaper and it does exactly what he needs. Now, that doc seat will entitle him to as many projects as he wants on that specific host. So if he gets invited to another company's host, it would be a different seat from that company. So from the architect's perspective, you're not paying per the project, you're paying per the user. And once that user has an entitlement, he can access as much as he wants. And let's say that user leaves the company, goes on vacation, or no longer needs that seat. It's easy. You take it back from him or her and give it to the new person who does need that. So you're not paying per project. Another question, can BIM360 work with or integrate with Workforce? I'm not sure off the top of my head. I'd have to double check on that. The great thing is there actually is a API for BIM360 that is available and widely used. I think there's something like 70 or 80 different plugins already made now. You can tie it into different tools via those tools, via the ones that are already out there. Things like Office, SharePoint. There's one for Assemble coming soon from Autodesk. There's a lot of different tools that can do that. If it doesn't already exist, that's something that our development team could actually help work with. So we've created several integrations with BIM360 already for clients that like the service, but really wished it could do something else, or really wished, as you were mentioning, it could tie in to some of the programs or services that they use heavily already. So that might be something that actually can be created if it doesn't already. Okay, let's see here. Alrighty, so just waiting to see if there's any other questions. While I'm checking the Q&A portion, I'm just going to launch the last poll here. So hopefully you found this webinar helpful. If there's things that you're curious about, hey, I've been really curious to see about what's new in this or how to do this. Feel free to reach out to us at Microdesk. We'd love to get your feedback, and we want to make sure that we're putting on content that is actually useful for everybody who's following along, and our clients are not our clients. We want to take care of the industry. Alrighty, thank you very much everybody who's been voting. And we have a couple of upcoming events and webinars just to make sure everybody knows about these. We have one coming up later on this month. It's going to be the basics of template creation in Revit. That's going to go over how to strategically set up the project, organize the information, and hopefully make sure you're starting off on the right foot so that way you're not having to do repetitive tasks over and over and over again. Then we have a couple of live events that we're going to be at. We have our Building Success up in Boston. We're posting that and going to be running through a bunch of things on that process. And at the Construction Institute BIM Council meeting, we have one of our team there, Eric Rudisau. He's going to be going over the use of Dynamo during the design and the construction phases. So if you've never heard of Dynamo or you're really curious about that and you're going to be local to where that is, definitely come. Eric's a great presenter and he knows a lot about Dynamo and programming and speeding up processes. So if anybody has any questions coming up after this, please feel free to reach out. Team@microdesk.com is, again, if you have any suggestions or things that you'd like to put in for future events. Any questions, reach out to us there. And again, thank you very much for your time, everybody. I really appreciate it.